George Orwell once wrote, "Women are always and inevitably on the side of the state." Most people dismiss that line as outdated or misogynistic. But what if Orwell wasn't making a political statement? What if it was a psychological insight? Because here's a thought. What if the modern state realized it doesn't need to rule through violence anymore, when it can rule through compassion? We live in a world where control is no longer sold as obedience. It's marketed as care. Where tyranny doesn't come with boots and guns, it comes with soft language, safety warnings, and the promise that someone is looking out for you. And that instinct to protect, to nurture, to preserve life is the feminine. But we're not talking about gender roles. We're talking about psychological forces that exist in all of us. What Jung called the masculine and feminine energies. The drive to create structure and challenge, masculine. And the drive to protect and connect, feminine. A healthy society needs both. But what happens when one dominates? What happens when compassion becomes the mask worn by coercion? Let's go deeper. For thousands of years, civilizations balanced these two energies. Masculine energy governed boundaries, risk, and order. Feminine energy nurtured, softened, and preserved. One created structure, the other protected life within it. But somewhere along the way, we didn't just tip the scales, we shattered them. Today, governments and institutions have learned that people don't rebel against safety, they submit to it. When the state says, "We're protecting you," who wants to argue with that? We're told surveillance is to keep us safe. Censorship is to protect the vulnerable. Restrictions are for your own good. Disagreement is harmful. We saw this during COVID, where asking questions could get you banned, all in the name of keeping others safe. On social media, platforms suppress dissenting opinions under the banner of emotional well-being or misinformation. University campuses cancel lectures, not for what's said, but for how it might make someone feel. And in a society where compassion is the highest virtue, even truth can be labeled violence. That's how ideology wins, not by force, but by guilt. But here's where it gets uncomfortably real. A professor gives a lecture on evolutionary biology. Nothing new, no slurs, no cruelty, just ideas. But some students say they felt unsafe, not challenged, not hurt, just uneasy. And the university responds, not with discussion, but with cancellation. Why? Because in a world ruled by pathological softness, how something makes you feel matters more than whether it's true. Truth didn't lose to reason, it lost to emotion. And that's what soft control looks like. Because men, especially those who lack power or status, will do almost anything for approval. In evolutionary terms, this is called the sneaky strategy. When a man can't compete through strength or dominance, he mimics moral superiority to gain access. So what do you get when the state captures the feminine psyche and redefines obedience as empathy and rebellion as cruelty? You get men competing to be the most compliant. Strength becomes suspicious. Disagreement becomes dangerous. Virtue is rebranded as submission. We see it everywhere. Online discourse is a morality pageant. Every post is a performance. Every opinion is dressed in righteousness. And yet, under the surface, something festers. Because if you can't express masculine energy, risk, challenge, truth without apology, it doesn't disappear. It mutates into resentment, into nihilism, into hollow performance. This isn't just theory. This is the architecture of modern culture. Zoom out. What happens when the maternal instinct isn't balanced by the paternal? You get a system that treats citizens like children, not adults with agency, but infants in need of constant supervision. This isn't an abstract trend. It's encoded in policy, education, media, and tech. Let's take one example, Foucault's concept of biopower. He argued that modern control isn't enforced through physical coercion anymore, but through the management of health, emotion, and life itself. Where Orwell warned of the boot stamping on a human face, Foucault warned of the therapist holding your hand. softly asking if you've been emotionally harmed by other people's ideas. Censorship isn't framed as censorship. It's reframed as emotional hygiene. Control becomes therapeutic, language becomes medicine, and the state becomes a kind of digital mother, soothing, correcting, medicating, watching. And this therapeutic control grows strongest when traditional support structures weaken, when the family phrase, for any number of complex reasons, the state steps in, not out of malice, but because someone must fill the void. It becomes the father, the provider, the disciplinarian. But without love, without proximity, without responsibility, the masculine role isn't just diminished, it's pathologized. Because masculine energy is hard to govern. It challenges rules, it builds, it rebels, it asks uncomfortable questions. So what's easier? To suppress it with guilt, to mock it, to label it dangerous, to tell men that their natural instincts are toxic, while simultaneously demanding they remain silent, apologetic, and docile. But this imbalance hurts everyone, including women, because when women are taught that needing a man is weakness, but depending on the state is strength, they haven't been liberated. They've been redirected. The state becomes the provider. Social programs replace interdependence. Bureaucracy becomes the new partner. But where a partner is held accountable by love and reciprocity, the state answers to no one. It grows, it dictates, and it never apologizes. And the ones who suffer most, the children raised in the vacuum of this inversion. Children without paternal structure don't just lack a parent, they lack boundaries. They lack models of resilience. They lack a balanced world. They grow up equating discomfort with violence, disagreement with danger, authority with oppression. That's how you engineer a culture that polices itself, a culture where everyone is afraid to say what they think, because someone might feel unsafe. A culture where moral authority doesn't come from truth, but from victimhood. Nietzsche warned us. He called it ressentiment, a moral reversal where the weak define the strong as evil and cloak their bitterness in the language of justice. This is what happens when we lose balance, when we elevate emotion above reason. The feminine becomes pathological, not because femininity is wrong, but because it's unbalanced. When a culture elevates the nurturing instinct to law, the caring impulse to ideology, and the avoidance of discomfort to policy, you don't get a society, you get a daycare. You get infantilized adults in a padded cell of their own making, scrolling, consuming, obeying. Because if you're always a victim, you never have to grow up. And the corporations, the institutions, the bureaucrats, they love that. Because helpless people are easy to control, scared people are easy to sell to, guilt-ridden people will do anything to feel morally clean. So you get people terrified of offending, but indifferent to being controlled. You get moral outrage over language, but apathy toward lies, surveillance, and censorship. And no one asks, wait, who benefits from this? Because once you've moralized obedience, you no longer need chains, you need only feelings. But here's the thing, the solution isn't to swing back to brute force. It's not to glorify domination, aggression, or emotional numbness. That's just the other side of the same imbalance. The answer isn't in overcorrection, it's in integration. Carl Jung said that every individual has both masculine and feminine energies. The anima and the animus, the nurturing mother and the wise father, the intuitive feeler and the courageous doer. When a culture denies one half of that equation, it becomes sick. When it denies the masculine, it loses its structure, its resilience, its truth. When it denies the feminine, it loses its compassion, its joy, its soul. We're not supposed to choose between them. We're supposed to reconcile them, to raise children with love and boundaries, to teach men to be strong and sensitive, to teach women to be soft and sovereign. The problem isn't femininity. The problem is weaponized femininity, detached from balance, unmoored from logos, turned into a tool of soft authoritarianism. We escape the boot of patriarchy, only to be smothered by the blanket of pathological care. The real revolution isn't left or right. It's not male or female. It's not traditionalist or progressive. It's inner balance. It's the courage to be both fierce and kind, to speak truth even when it hurts, to feel deeply but not be ruled by feelings, to be whole, because only whole people can't be manipulated. Only whole people see through the guilt. Only whole people are dangerous to systems that rely on fear. So ask yourself, do you want to be safe or do you want to be free? Because one will cost you your autonomy and the other will cost you your comfort, but only one will give you your soul. And in a world that wants you tame, predictable, and obedient, reclaiming your soul is the most rebellious thing you can do. What's one moment you've seen care used as control? Share this video with someone still trapped in the comfort cage, and subscribe if you're ready to reclaim your mind